This video was sponsored by Hostinger. In today's video, I'm made drawings into realistic versions using Photoshop. They could be anything, creepy and terrifying, or wholesome and cute. Nothing is too crazy here. Let's not waste any time and get straight into today's drawings.
With another edit, start up Photoshop, you know I'm in the zone when I gotta get with it, no time to fight back. Started with a rough sketch, textures and backgrounds and lights that I must fetch. I'm feeling this vibe, shadows and lights start to bring it alive. Yo, it's time to cut it up and I can't believe my eyes. This is what I call Realistified.
It has been way too long, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to this brand new episode of Realistified, the show in which I turn your drawings into realistic images using Photoshop. I have some quite literally killer drawings for today, so let's get straight to them. First one for today. This is going to be a challenge, I can already tell. Hello Benny, I really enjoy watching your videos and I was hoping you could realistify an image for me. Thank you, Archer. Like I said, this will be a challenge, but I do think I can make this work. I do like the tentacles. This could become something really action-packed and dynamic, so let's get straight to it. First, I actually rearranged the composition of the original drawing just a little bit to make it nice and pleasing to the eye. Quickly after, I began drawing the basic shapes for the robot's body parts, starting with the head. I made them different colors to see what I was doing, and that's when it was time for my best friend in this edit, this metal texture. I filled in all the planes with this texture to make it look metal. To kind of see the final effect, however, we need to add some shading. The most important aspect are always the shadows, and pretty much right away, this made it look pretty nice. And with this subtle white line, I was able to add a bit of a bevel to it as well. You probably know what this means, however, I need to do this to the entire body. And that was diabolical. This only goes for the big parts, however, because the smaller details I did using various 3D elements from guess where, Envato Elements. I just looked up sci-fi and you get 1 trillion metal parts thrown your way. Quite literally everything we could possibly need. To kind of get the accurate shapes, though, I need to cut up loads of things and combine them, like I did with this rifle, for example. It's a huge puzzle filling up all the gaps and adding important details and elements. That wasn't quite as painful as the next thing, however. Filling up every remaining shape with that metal texture and then adding shading to it, shadows. Absolute shit. Ton of work, but it does end up looking really nice, so it's worth it. This process kept on going for ages, adding new little elements, blending them in there using shadows and some highlights. Just the same kind of idea repeated over and over until you lose the will to live. But that's when you know you're doing something right.
And my daddy, but he calling me baby. Talk ain't cheap, so he know he gotta pay me. Chauffeur got him driving Miss Daisy.
Jokes aside though, I'm really happy I did because look at this. It is still a little bit too clean though, but don't worry, we're gonna fix that later. Next, I put in some of those tentacles we see in the original drawing, but I didn't put them all in the same spots. I wanted them to be a little bit more prominently present for a dramatic effect. Besides, it's the idea that counts. I then popped in a nice dramatic sky along with a few rocks for the base, and this, ladies and gentlemen, is where we get into that classic Benny blending. Benny blending. I blended these two images together just a little bit to make a nice atmosphere. But that would be improved later because I simply could not wait to add the smoke behind the robot, like the thruster fire. Again, from Envato Elements, I used a bunch of smoke 3D models to recreate this desired effect. It actually took a little while before I got the lighting to look alright, but I pushed through and ended up with something rather nice.
Back then, boy, what you really own? Can you make it flip and then still give me what I want?
As you know, some glow always helps to make it pop, and well, there is light, so we're gonna need some highlights. Mostly the robot needed some of that, so using orange, I painted on the areas that needed to be lit up. And this is the exact moment I started to get excited. Up until this point, I was skeptical, to put it lightly. I popped in a little muzzle flash for the gun, and really this resulted in the same kind of steps again, adding glow and the highlights that go with it. Super satisfying as always. I don't think that's something that'll ever get boring about Photoshop. It's no secret that I'm not super in love with it anymore, but yes, this I love. Now, like I said earlier, the robot is still very much clean looking, so I started adding some grunge to the metal. And crikey, that helped. It looked really nice and used now, which is precisely what I was looking for. And after some more little tweaks, I called it good. Now, the tentacles, and I hate to be boring here, but guess what? Same kind of thing again, shadows and highlights. It was important though that the one wrapping around his leg looks as if it's, well, actually wrapping around it. But luckily, that's nothing some proper shading won't fix. Same thing had to happen for all the other tentacles, and well, there you go. It was at this point where it felt nearly finished, but I did make some final off-screen tweaks, taking it from this to this. I absolutely love the way it turned out. It's crisp, really just badass looking. So, well, all I can say is big thanks for sending this over. This turned out pretty fire. Literally. Now, say you wanted to sell something like this poster, or yourself, or anything else. A website is a must, and Hostinger is quite literally the perfect solution. It is easy to use, cheap, premium quality, and let's be real, they've got a cool freaking name. They were kind enough to sponsor this video, so let me walk you through setting up your very own website. First, head to hostinger.com/Benny. You can see that they have a few different plans. Personally, I use the business plan here. It comes with cool AI features and most importantly, e-commerce features that allow me to sell my products. So select the business plan and then you'll be asked to select the length of the plan. As with every subscription, the longer you select, the more you save. I recommend the 12-month version at the very least because you also get a free domain and a free email. And now you can also use code Benny for 10% off. And as you can see, Hostinger is much cheaper than your standard builder. Now, when building your website, you select AI Website Builder. You simply add a brand name, a description of what you're looking for, and in seconds, AI will create a website for you. You can then go in and edit that with their drag and drop features. I myself, personally, I hate to waste time, and this way I don't have to spend hours upon hours only for it to look mid in the end. And if you do prefer to be a little bit more hands-on, you can absolutely do that, or choose from their many templates. Now, another aspect of Hostinger, which I find quite baffling to be honest, is they have a 0% transaction fee for e-commerce. If you sell a product, any product, 100% of the profit goes to you. That is a feature you will not find anywhere else. Hostinger is the place to be for people like you and me. Oh my god, that rhymes. If you're interested, make sure to use the link down below. And then for now, I guess, back to the Photoshop. Okay. I can already tell this particular one is going to be a bit of a different approach. Probably going to be a lot of painting, but the message included is very simple. Something to realistify. So, well, I'm going to try my best and see what happens. Nowadays, I mostly try and stay away from speeding up my footage because it's kind of a lame and low effort way to making these videos, but for this one, it felt like it makes sense. First of all, this particular one ended up being my typical shape and shading technique, over and over and over again. It's really just digital art at this point. There is absolutely zero photo manipulation present. But then secondly, I've heard people talk about how satisfying they find it to watch this type of shading sped up. And I pretty much agree with that. It's really cool to see the shapes come to life this way. As for the artwork here, you'll notice I did some minor changes to the original design. The biggest change are the teeth. I thought it'd be a tad cleaner or cooler to make his teeth a regular size and instead adding like drooly kind of bits to of course still match that general shaping of the original design. As if he's really thirsty for violence. Very dark, but pretty cool. Anyway, you can clearly see what I'm doing here. I take a shape, then add the first layer of shadows to it, creating the base lighting. A second one to really darken up those deep crevices and other dark parts. And I finish that off with a highlight layer, which typically gives it a more shiny, rubbery effect. Something I do pretty often in my work and has kind of become like a recognizable feature, I suppose. I gotta say, I found this design kind of fun to work on because of how different it is. And, well, it's just a bit goofy. And yes, I did notice the original drawing being 3 different pieces, presumably drawn by 3 different people at different times. I hesitated actually implementing 3 different styles for this guy, but I really just wanted to see him as one coherent character. Things that, in my opinion, turned out particularly well for this one are the yellow color. I don't know why, I love the way that looks. And the shininess of the Tommy gun also I am very satisfied with. I did play around with the colors a little bit and eventually ended up with the robes being purple and yellow. At the very end, I also added my own little extras, such as a bit of smoke coming from the gun's barrel and bullets flying around him to subtly fill up the empty spaces around him, creating a nice, solid rectangular design. A simple camera raw filter later, and well, here you go. It's a very strange little guy. It's a particular design, to put it like that, but in a good way, I think. It's fun. This drawing will mainly be that more traditional photo bashing I've been doing all this time. I quite like this. It's a very meaningful image, obviously. Sent in by Ashan. Here's a message he sent, quite long, but I will try my absolute best and see what happens. I threw in the book and right after that the wooden base floor. With Distort I added some perspective to that, and with Perspective Warp matched the book to the floor. And I love that tool. I always say this, but it's incredible. This pocket watch I was gonna use later. First I wanted to try and create almost like a hole in this page using these paper tear images. I cut them up, positioned them properly, and immediately matched the color to that of the paper, even with a bit of a texture inside. And I could now quite literally put whatever image I want inside this page, and it instantly kind of looks integrated into it. I tried this dark forest photo I found and moved it around until I was happy with the placement. An idea I had right after seeing this drawing was having some of the landscape bleed into the real world, so to speak. So with a brush I painted some of that extra ground and dirt on top, making it seem as though it kind of fell out of the book. And to make that effect a little bit more convincing, I also applied a mossy texture to the page. Incredible. Time to make this wood look a little bit nicer and warmer, using some color adjustments and levels. This is also when I realized this book definitely needs some shadows, both below on the wooden base, as well as the book itself. For now, I made the background nice and dark and even faded out those planks to black. See now it's getting shape. Ladies and gentlemen, trust the process. A little bit of a glow always does wonders, and this time was no different. Made it just nice and extra hazy. Now on to the second half of the book, where it's nice and peaceful. I found this image with a cool wooden walkway, so I popped that in place, and this time around decided to go with a nice, very soft edge, resulting in the whole thing looking slightly more dreamy. Perfect. And also on this side, I wanted it to come out of the page. So I grabbed the wooden ramp, cut a piece out, and then put that on top of the page, extending it outward. This, of course, needed a bunch of shadows to make it work, especially underneath the wood. But not only that, it also needs to be held up by tiny little wooden pillars. So I put those in place as well, using that same wooden texture above. Some extra little blending was in order to make it work, and well, that's really not that bad, actually, so far. Next, the candle is also a must, and while the positioning might not be identical, it's definitely a similar kind of candle design. On top of that, I put a little candle flame, because it does have to be on, obviously, followed by an unholy amount of glow for the nicest, warmest, coziest effect. The rest of the candle needed some blending as well, primarily increasing the contrast and adding some harmonizing colors to the background. I even tried adding a reflection in it, so that's pretty neat, I guess. And these exact steps were again required for the pocket watch. I got right into that, and mostly the shadows were important here, as you want to make sure it really looks like it's touching the ground. And then now it was time for a big boy decision, the background. The original drawing has stars, it seems, but I came across something that I think will be absolutely beautiful. I shoved in these cathedral type windows and then added a nice blur to it to increase the distance. Afterwards, I made sure the light areas have a cool blue tone, and guess what? Glow. Once again. It was now that I started doing the final touches, including some subtle lighting coming from the background and other little tiny specific things that are so insignificant, it would just be sad to try and elaborate because it's very specific. Now, besides the fact that I think it turned out pretty neat, I also really love the messaging behind images like this. I interpret this as something along the lines of, you never know what the next chapter in life is going to be. You might be in a dark place today, but if you keep going, you might find a sunrise on the next page. Damn. That Now, you may have noticed the absence of the person from the original drawing, but I felt like that would have just made it a bit too cheesy. I like that it's a bit more clean and calm now, and more open for interpretation. I had a blast doing these as usual. The first one is definitely my favorite. And if you want to send your drawings for a potential next episode, make sure to use this email address you see down below. Big thanks to Hostinger for sponsoring this video, and then I guess for today, that is pretty much it. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, hit the bell not to miss a single future video, and then I hope I'll see you in the next one.